ARM begins its public offering process with the F-1. By the way, it's funny, they've been public before. Is it an IPO? And what's and what the heck is an F1 versus an S1?
Yeah.
Matt, we'll go with you on this one.
Yeah. So this was I put this up. You might have some thoughts on it too, Pat. But so ARM is, everyone knows ARM, right? They're based out of the UK. So F1 versus S1. We're just talking about prior to the show. S1 is for domestic companies, and F1s are for foreign companies that want to list on an American stock exchange. And so ARM filed the paperwork, the F1 on Monday. I think it's early September. They're looking to go public. And I think Citibank is the underwriter for it, from what I saw, which I thought was interesting. But the reason I bring this up is I was poking through their F1, kind of trying to get a little bit more information around anchor investors, because there's a lot of chat around who's really going to be driving a lot of this IPO. And while that information wasn't in there, something I thought was very interesting was in there, and that is ARM is claiming a 10% market share of the cloud CPU space. And so for those who are just listening at home or just starting to follow ARM at home, they entered the cloud space. Pat, when did Graviton launch? 2019, was it?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. Already on the third generation here. But yeah, I think it's 2019. I think it was the landing zone. And before that, it was Nitro, where they had about 200,000 Nitro surrounding its x86 servers at AWS.
So it's amazing to me, though, that within a few years they've gone from effectively 0 to 10% of the cloud market share when it comes to CPUs, right? And that's anchored by Ampere and what Ampere has done with Oracle Cloud, with Azure, with GCP, and in China as well. But I'm kind of, I've been sitting back, and just like you didn't have an opinion on what's gonna in the previous topic, and kind of what's going to happen with Gen AI on the edge. I don't have an opinion on whether this is a great thing for ARM, but I just find it fascinating that here's a company with that has shipped 250 billion parts to date. 36 billion they're estimating, or 30 billion they're estimating they shipped in 2023 or fiscal 2023. Been around since 1990, refiling for an IPO or going public again. Does this? Do you think, Pat, this bolsters them in the cloud space? Does it? Is this a great thing for them, or is this just a who cares kind of thing?
Well, I think I mean, look at the amount of capitalization that they're going to get, right? I mean, we thought $40 billion was big with NVIDIA buying them. Mm-hmm. Now you're looking at 70, 100 billion. I mean, it's massive. And even though the parent company SoftBank is going to keep a big ownership position, it's dollars that they can potentially use to buy companies and buy capabilities. And I think the numbers, even though the growth numbers are a little bit skewed, if you look at the top line, they have grown. But what happened is they had made huge investments into IoT, and then they essentially unraveled it all, right? So they have this huge growth in the data center, which, if you guys remember 12 years ago, right, it was 32-bit ARM processors that had no consistent boot process. Kind of had compatible operating systems, no middleware, and a few applications.
Yep.
Right, like Nginx. So now, I mean, it's amazing, right? You have consistency in boot. You have operating systems, middleware, applications, application tools, dev kits, and for me, ARM arrived in the data center with AWS, right, and then moved up with Ampere, and I think the sky is the limit. And then you had Apple come in and show and reinforce what I've tried to been teaching people for years. It's not about the instruction set. Don't confuse with a performance and efficiency with an instruction set.
Right.
It's about the developer and the architect who can put this together. And by the way, it takes about 10 years if you want to roll a new ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where we are today. My expectation is that ARM is going to continue to take market share. I do believe that both Azure and Google are doing first-party designs for the data center that is ARM based.
Mm-hmm.
And I base that nothing other than they're hiring CPU architects.
Left and right.
You don't hire CPU architects in a company where you're going to be buying processors. Okay. And when you look at the tool set makers of Cadence and Synopsys and the ability to take IP directly from design, pull it in and take it all the way down to the foundry. I mean,
yeah.
It cost me about $1 billion to roll a new processor when we did Opteron back in 2001.
Yeah.
And now it takes about $50 million to put together an SoC. Now your BOM costs are a lot higher because you're probably pulling a lot of the IP off the shelf, but that's why the hyperscalers can get in this and make things happen. On the PC side with Windows, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably not a very good deal that ARM does with Apple, and I don't think it's driving a tremendous amount of revenue on the architectural license. But when I look at what Qualcomm is cooking up with its ACPC and its new Orion chip that, by the way, it is the ex-Apple architects who brought the M1 and the M2 and the M2 derivatives to the table, I believe that will change the game in PCs, and that's not even being factored in here. I like the leadership too. You know, Rene Haas, ex NVIDIA, right? I've known him for probably 15 years so far. He's a pro. He knows how to run a company, very serious. And quite frankly, when I first started researching ARM, probably 15 years ago, when I was still at AMD, I couldn't figure out why they didn't monetize more. It's like, wait a second, you're basically in every phone on the planet, and you're doing this for pennies on your licenses. I couldn't fully understand how such an important company wasn't worth a lot, right? And it's because, hey, they were the friendly people. And I do understand that ARM is rubbing people the wrong way, who used to be very happy with their super low prices. But I think they were leaving money on the table, and it's no way to run a business. So I think ARM is adding a lot more value now, spending a lot more, particularly in the data center and into the PC.
I think there's a huge opportunity. It's funny because we always talk about ARM in the context of the cloud when it comes to the data center, but we forget they have a decent presence on the HPC, the Super 500 list, and they have some amazing parts. We also forget that this thing called Grace Hopper from NVIDIA.
Yes,
is also ARM based. I mean, there is a huge growth potential for them across all segments of the data center.
Yeah, EdgeQ, a company that I've spoken with, they're doing a base station on a chip. They're using RISC and ARM in a very innovative architectural design. So, yeah, it seems to me that ARM's got a lot of upside here.
Yeah. The RISC-V cool thing that they can do is you can put special instructions into a native design. ARM has a program that they rolled out a couple of years to do that. But I expect RISC-V to get a lot of the lower end business. I mean, we're looking at a hard drive controller that doesn't run a high level operating system. I totally get it. And I think the Chinese and even some of the Western hyperscalers are very interested in RISC-V as well. But I think they can both grow here. And again, I think that I'm very, very bullish about this one. And the difference between 40 billion and 70 billion, I mean, that's pretty freaking awesome.
That's a lot.
If you're Masa-san.